The world of cinema has fallen silent. Its lights, once golden and alive, dimmed to mourning as news spread that Diane Keaton, the woman who turned truth into art, was gone. On October 11, 2025, in the stillness of her California home, her final breath slipped quietly into eternity. When the announcement broke, the world seemed to stop scrolling, as if even the air refused to move. Because how do you say goodbye to a woman who made you feel seen even in your loneliest hour? Her death left a hollow ache, not just in her family's heart, but in an entire generation that grew up in her light. For more than 5 decades, she wasn't only an actress, she was an era. She shattered rules, defied the definition of perfection. And through films like The Godfather and Annie Hall, she rewrote the way love, fear, and imperfection could live on screen. She was quirky, fearless, endlessly human. Yet behind the laughter that defined her was a lifetime of silence that never stopped echoing. The woman who made millions smile was the same woman who fought her own shadows in private. Her secret wounds, the love that never healed, the loneliness that lingered even when applause was loud, all of it lived quietly beneath her charm. Time, relentless as always, has written its final act. What we witness now is not simply the passing of Diane Keaton, but the collapse of a monument. The extinguishing of a light that once warmed generations. Her laughter fades into the kind of silence that feels sacred. A silence that reminds us that even broken hearts can still shine. Born on January 5, 1946, beneath the sun of Los Angeles, Diane Keaton entered a world that worshipped perfection and hid its pain. Her father, Jack Hall, a gentle civil engineer, believed discipline was love. Her mother, Dorothy Diane Keaton Hall, once crowned Mrs. Los Angeles 1955, glowed briefly with theatrical ambition before surrendering it to domestic life. Their home looked perfect from the street, but behind closed doors lived a silence so heavy it shaped every breath of the little girl watching. "We didn't talk about feelings," she would later confess. "We just lived inside them." That silence became her language. She saw her mother's light fade and vowed to never repeat it. "I realized my mother's life was a warning, not a map," she wrote years later. At 9 years old, she whispered a promise to herself, "I will not live my mother's life." While other girls dreamed of white fences, Diane dreamed of escape, of lights and scripts, of a life made from her own imagination. Teachers called her strange, classmates said she was too different, but she was already building the kind of rebellion that doesn't scream, it burns quietly. Until the world has to notice. At 20, she left Los Angeles with one suitcase, 2 scripts, and a hunger that had no name. It was 1966, winter in New York City, gray and cruel. She found a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper, a coughing radiator, and windows that leaked the cold straight into her bones. The city was loud, but she had never felt more unseen. Audition lines stretched down streets. Rejections came faster than hope. Too tall, too strange. Not the type. Still she kept walking, shoes thin, pride thinner while unbroken. By noon she waited tables. By night she sang in smoky basements for spare change. Dinner was tea, and half a slice of bread she pretended was enough. When loneliness crept too close, she whispered to herself, "Not yet." Fear became her engine. It kept her alive, and it would later become the rhythm of her art. Every no, every cold night, every hunger pang was teaching her endurance. And then, after 2 years of rejection, came the call that changed everything. A Broadway revival of Hair needed someone raw and real. Diane Keaton auditioned barefoot, trembling, but fearless. The director simply said, "Don't change a thing," under the stage lights. Her voice cracked open the silence she'd been carrying since childhood. The audience didn't see polish, they saw truth. In that moment, the quiet girl from Los Angeles became a voice the world could no longer ignore. From the cold of New York, she rose into the heat of fame. The Godfather arrived in 1972, and with it, the transformation. As Kay Adams, beside Al Pacino's haunted Michael Corleone, she embodied the pain of love lived in shadow. The role gave her what she had fought for. Since childhood, a voice powerful enough to echo through Hollywood. Then came Annie Hall in 1977, the film that captured her soul completely. The hats, the turtlenecks, the awkward laugh, they weren't costume. They were Diane herself. That performance didn't just win an Oscar. It gave a generation permission to be imperfect. She was 31 when she held that golden statue under blinding lights. Yet when she returned home, she set it on the counter, stared at her reflection, and whispered, "Is this what it feels like to be seen?" Every spotlight casts a shadow, and hers was already growing. Fame can be beautiful, but it is never gentle. She chased perfection until her hands shook, rewriting lines no one had asked her to change. Terrified that the next role would prove she'd been lucky, not gifted. "I didn't sleep," she once admitted. "I was scared to stop." She drove through Los Angeles at night with the windows down, letting the cold burn her face, trying to remember what simple peace felt like. She said, Maybe success just gave me permission to be broken in public. By 1981, during Res. Directed by Warren Beatty, she gave everything she had left. When filming ended, she cried in her car, not from sadness, but because she had nothing more to give. Critics called her extraordinary. She felt empty. And then the inevitable silence returned. The mid-80s came with films that faltered. The Little Drummer Girl struggled, the box office turned cold, and the applause that once lifted her now felt far away. Everyone thought she was still on top. Inside she was falling. For a while she disappeared, not out of defeat, but out of exhaustion. She turned down million-dollar roles because fame without truth felt like another kind of failure. The applause fades, she told a young actress once. But the work, that's what saves you. In the quiet, she began to rebuild herself, not as a star, but as a human being who had survived the noise. She learned that even light can burn, that greatness isn't given, it's endured. Every sleepless night, every trembling hand, every whisper of doubt became part of her legend. The woman the world adored for her laughter had built that laughter out of fear. And just when she began to make peace with her solitude, when she thought she had finally outrun the ache of needing someone, life brought her face to face with the one man she could never truly forget, Al Pacino. They met when the world was young and cinema still believed in forever. On the set of The Godfather, Diane Keaton was 25. Alive with nervous laughter and unguarded hope, Al Pacino was 31, brilliant, private, already half lost inside his own genius. Between them something invisible began to hum. The kind of frequency that only two lonely hearts can hear. I was crazy about him from the start, she later confessed. Those who saw them together said it wasn't passion they shared, it was recognition. Two souls who understood the ache of wanting everything and still feeling incomplete. They spent nights reading lines to each other, whispering between takes, laughing about nothing until the world outside disappeared. He cooked pasta in small kitchens, she brewed tea, and together they created small moments that felt like eternity. For Diane, it wasn't fame she wanted, it was home. A light that might finally stop running from silence. But silence was exactly what destiny had waiting for her. Through the Godfather trilogy, their on-screen marriage mirrored the story. They were too afraid to finish in real life. By the time part 2 wrapped, their connection had deepened into something holy and haunted. She believed that when the noise of Hollywood faded, they would finally find peace together. But by the late 1980s, that hope had turned into waiting. And waiting became heartbreak disguised as patience. When The Godfather Part 3 began filming in Rome, she was 44. Still carrying the ghost of that young woman who once believed in forever. They stayed in the same villa overlooking the gold light of the city, laughing at old memories that felt like promises. And then one evening, beneath a Roman sky the color of forgiveness, she finally asked the question that had lived inside her for 20 years. Marriage or goodbye? She whispered. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but surrender, the final prayer of a woman who had waited too long to be chosen. The silence that followed was his answer. No storm, no scene. Just the unbearable stillness of a man retreating into himself. She didn't cry. She simply folded her dreams between clothes that smelled of wine and regret and left before dawn. On the flight home, the seat beside her was empty. Had always been empty, and now it always would be. Days later, another call came. Her father, Jack Hall, had collapsed. The diagnosis was merciless, a brain tumor. While she was mourning one love, she began losing another. Hospitals replaced film sets. Machines hummed where music once played. She sat by his bedside, holding the hand that once held hers on the way to school. Don't go yet, Dad, she whispered. But death never waits for permission. Jack Hall had been her quiet compass, the proof that love could be steady and unconditional. Losing him felt like losing the last light left on in the house. After he was gone, she left the lamp on his desk burning for weeks, as though electricity itself refused to accept it. She would stand there and whisper, I'm trying, Dad, I really am. But the silence that answered her changed her forever. The months that followed were a descent no camera ever captured. The woman the world adored disappeared into therapy rooms and empty hallways. I broke then, she said years later. Not loudly, just quietly broke. Every morning she made tea and forgot to drink it. Every night she left a lamp burning in case grief ever decided to leave. Fame couldn't fill the hollow. Awards couldn't silence the ache. The heartbreak wasn't cinematic, it was slow. Cumulative. The kind that gathers grain by grain until one day you realize you're buried under it. Yet out of that rubble she did what she'd always done, she rebuilt. She stopped waiting for someone to save her and began building a home inside herself instead. She learned that the silence which once destroyed her could also become peace. And then, when the world thought she had retreated forever, she returned not to chase fame, but to choose love in another form. In her 50s she adopted her daughter Dexter, and 5 years later her son Duke. They saved me, she said softly. I thought I was done with love. Then they arrived, her home filled with laughter again, the kind that doesn't need applause. She built tree houses instead of movie sets, packed lunches instead of scripts. I used to think I wanted romance, she joked. Turns out I just wanted family. In them she found the love that stayed. And so, as Hollywood glittered on without her, Diane Keaton quietly created a life that finally made sense, a life of light, gardens, and small miracles. By the time she reached her 70s, the woman once chased by noise now chased stillness. Each morning she walked barefoot through her garden, whispering to the trees, "You're still here." So, am I? On October 11, 2025, the California sun rose over her Brentwood home exactly as it always had. On her desk sat a teacup still warm, her reading glasses resting atop an open journal. She had been writing about love, as she always did. Her daughter Dexter found her seated in her favorite armchair, head tilted toward the window. The morning light wrapped gently around her face. The tea still steamed, the room still held her scent, but Diane Keaton was gone. No struggle, no sound, just a breath that slipped into eternity. Dexter called Duke, her voice shaking. "She's gone." For a long moment neither spoke. The house, once full of her quiet strength, felt cavernous. Later that morning, the family released a brief statement. Diane Keaton passed peacefully at her home, surrounded by light and love. News spread like wildfire. Within minutes her face filled every screen in America. Outside her home, fans gathered with candles and white turtlenecks folded neatly at the gate, the uniform of the woman who made imperfection fashionable. Someone left a note, "You made us brave enough to be ourselves." Al Pacino, her once great love, released a trembling statement. "She was my heart's quiet mirror." Meryl Streep called her vulnerability made heroic. Steve Martin remembered her as the funniest, wisest, most original soul. Woody Allen said, "There was no Diane Keaton before her, and there will be none after." Even Leonardo DiCaprio, who worked with her as a teenager, wrote, "She was endlessly kind, endlessly curious, endlessly herself." That night, the Academy's tribute reel played across theaters from Los Angeles to Rome. Clips from Annie Hall, Red's "Something's Gotta Give" over a soft piano. Her voice echoed, "Love is the greatest risk, but I'd take it again." Across the world, people wept not just for a star, but for a mirror. Because Diane Keaton wasn't pretending to be human, she showed us how to be. Her legacy, measured not in trophies but in tenderness, lies on in every woman who dares to be both brave and strange. She proved that solitude can be sacred, that kindness can be rebellion, that light and fear can share the same room. She built homes, saved landmarks, donated millions quietly to causes of restoration, and left her children a letter that read, "Don't sell the garden. Let it grow wild. That's where I'll still be." Somewhere tonight, that garden sways under the California wind, the jasmine brushing against her window as if the earth itself refuses to let her go. She didn't fade away. She became part of the light, the kind that never burns out, the kind that forgives everything. If her story has touched your heart tonight, let it stay there. Press like, not for numbers, but as a final candle for Diane Keaton. Write "Rip Diane Keaton" below, not as goodbye, but as a promise that her light will never dim. Because the truest stars don't live in the sky. They live in us, forever burning quietly, where the light never dies. The light never dies.